Okay, we have completed the creation of the database, and now we're going to create a Windows application to display out information in the database and to insert transactions. So we're going to start with uh, adding a grid view and the form for inserting transactions, combo box, text box, and a submit button. And then we're going to, for the displaying of the transactions by cashier, we're going to put a list view control and a combo box to select the cashier and a submit button. So let's get started. On the hints, we have hints here, and we're going to do these steps here where we double click on the form and we add the grid views, add the combo boxes, and then after that we're going to connect those controls up with the help of this code here. So let's get started. We can close the database that we created in the previous video. And so here we are with the form. And so let's first add a grid view. It's called the data grid view. That here, and this will be on top. I'm going to make this wider. We can add those later. Let's make this wider. Grid view. And then let's add and that will list our customers. And then let's add a combo box this is to insert transactions. We'll have a combo box here to select cashiers. We'll have a combo box to select the transaction code. We will have a text box to insert a customer ID. And we will have a button which will serve as our submit button for inserting a transaction. Finally, to display transactions by cashier, we're going to add a combo box again to select the cashier. We will have a submit button to submit our request, and our results will display on a list view, which will go right here. Okay, those are our form elements of our form controls. So let's now start by connecting up our grid view to display our customers. So that's pretty easy. Click on the smart tag here. We're going to choose a data source and add project data source. Database, next. Data set, next. We're going to use, this is our database. We're going to use that connection string. Next. And yes, that's our connection string. Next. We're going to select from the tables, we're going to select customers. Actually, I believe we can include all of these customers. Finish. And now we can select our data source, click down on other data sources. This is the one we just created, and we're going to want to choose customers. And when we're done, we see that we have our customers table here. Oops, I didn't do that. We can just run this right now. Let's see if it works. And here we are. We see that it displays out the two customers that we have. Very nice. So now let's connect up the rest of our controls. This selects cashiers, so let's connect that up. Use data bound items. Our data source, we can use that same data source we used before. These are going to be cashiers. And for our display member, we want to display the cashier's first name. And for our value, we want that to be the cashier ID. And so that's the end of that. The next one, we're going to want this to be transactions. And we can just add these directly. We're going to have a -10, and we're going to have a -1, -1, and 10. Okay. That's all we need to do for that. This is our text box, which will be our customer ID, and so that those are now connected up. Let's connect this one up to our. We can connect this up to the same data source, cashier's binding source. Display member will be our first name, and the value member will be cashier ID. So that connects that up, and let's make our list view able to accept the 5 fields that we want. You notice the list view is going to contain the transactions for a particular cashier. So to set that up, let's click on this thing where you have to switch this to details, the view to details, and we're going to have 5 columns, one for the transaction ID, one for the cashier's name, one for the customer name, one for the date of the transaction, and one for the transaction code. And we can leave that there for now. We can go back and adjust those later. So let's connect up this form here, which is the submit transaction. I'm going to put a little label above that. And I'm going to put a label here also. Okay, now let's hook this up here. And to do that, we want the event to occur when this button is clicked. So let's click on this button, and our code comes up ready to enter in the event handler for clicking the button. This is where we can use the notes that we have. This is the code here for handling the submission of a transaction. So let's just copy this, go over to the code here and paste it in. And what we have here is we are determining the selected value for the first combo box, which is this one, combo box 1, and we are selecting the item from the second combo box, which is the transaction. We're converting both of these to integers and assigning them into these variables. The third text box contains a customer ID. We're going to store that into this variable, and then we are calling the insert transaction function, which is contained in our yet to be defined final database class, which we will create. So let's create that. Let's go to the Solution Explorer. And click here, and let's create a new class. Add a class, and let's call it the same name, FinalDB, just to make it easier. It's a class called FinalDB. And in this class, we're going to put all of our methods and our connection string and so on for accessing our database. We have some help here. Database class. First, we're going to enter public static in front of the class declaration. And we are going to add this creation of the connection string connecting to the database. We have to use that in every query. And next we need to add, let's add the method for inserting the transaction. Here we go. I'll explain this. Okay, now, first of all, we need to resolve this. Can we resolve it? Does this work? Yes. So we needed to add this using statement. And now we see the red squiggly line goes away. For the connection string, this may not be the correct connection string. This is actually the connection string that I used in my notes. So we got to find what the appropriate path is to our database. So to do that, let's go back to Server Explorer. Let's find our database. Here it is, database 1. And we can right click on it and look at the properties. And here is the connection string right here. So let's click on the connection string. Control A, Control C, and let's just put this in a comment right above. This is the connection string, and actually it is from attached. We are trying to find something that looks like this, and that would be like here, this attached DB file name. There's actually this string here that is the path to our database that we just created. So let's put that here. And that takes care of that. Now this is the insert transaction. We've got our cashier ID, customer ID, and transaction code coming in. I don't see any squiggly lines. This constructs our date, so we can insert that into our database. These are the field names, and these are our parameters. So let's just run this and see what happens. I know we're going to have a problem. We didn't define our transaction class. Let's just try it though. So that submits it. Let's see what our database looks like. I'm going to shut this off. And look at our Server Explorer. Look at our transactions. View the table. And we see there's actually a transaction that we just added right now, and that's the right time. So it looks like our submit worked. Let me run it one more time and add. I'm going to add submit a transaction from myself. Give myself 10 credits. I'm number 2 here, so I'm going to put a 2 there and click on the button. And when we check our table over here, let's refresh this. We see that a new one is added. My being the cashier, my being the customer at this time. Okay, so that seems to work. Very good. Let's go back to, we can close this. Let's go back now and get this working. Let's connect up. Let's get this thing to work. So basically when we click on this button, we will have selected a cashier. Click on this button and we will see the transactions appear here. So double click on this button and we're going to copy we can just go back to our reference here and we need to, we're going to use this code here, which populates, this code here reads the transaction. This is in our database. This is the get transactions method. It reads up a transaction, reads up the set of transactions for this cashier ID, stores them into this container, and then when we double click, this code executes, which calls the get transactions method, gets the data, and loops, storing each record into the list view. And then that displays the list of transactions. So we can copy this into where we click the button here, button 2, and that appears, and we see that there's some red squiggly lines. We haven't defined a transaction container yet. That'll be a class. We haven't defined the get transactions method yet in FinalDB. And once we do that, then we should get these things to work. So let's go back to FinalDB here, and we can copy in the code for getting transactions. Let's copy this. Copy. And we can paste it right after this insert transactions. And we see that, again, we need a transaction container. That's basically all that we need. So let's create our transaction container class, Solution Explorer, right click, add class, and we're going to just call it transaction, singular. In our transaction class, we have some notes here for that. It's this here. First, add the word public in front of the class declaration. We're almost done here. And this is the code that defines the container for a transaction. A transaction has a transaction ID, a cashier ID, customer ID, cashier, customer, which we will read from the respective tables, customer and cashier's table. And we've got a transaction code and a date. And these are all private. The public references are here, unless they're capitalized. The transaction database table actually only has this, and this. But we can also use this container to join with the join tables of customer and cashier and use this container also for that. And that's what we do. So now that we have this container in here, let's go back to our file DB and we see that there's no more squiggly lines here. Let's go back to this, to the form code. We see there's no squiggly lines here. Let's see if this works. Click start. And we can select me and click on the button. And lo and behold, there's my transaction. Let's select Kim, see what's there, and we see there's the one we entered for good. We don't have any for Joey because we haven't entered any transactions for Joey. It doesn't do anything. We can enter a transaction for Joey here. Then when we click on this button, we should see now there's a transaction for Joey. Now to finish this part of the file, I would like you to see that you have adjusted these columns here so they are more appropriate. You can do that by editing the columns, and we can change, like for example, this is the first one. Make sure you change the right thing. Header text here, we can just call this the ID, and it only really needs to be maybe 50 or less width, and we see that looks better. For the first name, we can do something like go up here to the header text, and we really need to have that underscore there. 100 is probably okay, and so on. Street number, we can just probably change street number to just number, and will be the house number. It may be very big. So you can go through and make that look nice. It's nice to have these labels here. Maybe you want to make them look a little nicer. I'm messing with the font a little bit. Maybe bold this. Maybe make it a little bigger. Like that. Maybe we can bring this down a little bit. I would definitely like to see something like and something like and of course we want to name these columns and mess with the widths a little bit. This column header 1 can be it's the transaction ID, so we can put that ID here. This one is going to be the name of this is the cashier, 150. This is the customer. This is the date. And this is the transaction code. So now we see it looks like that, and when we run it, It looks a lot better. See? Maybe stir this a lot. Okay, so that's it. Good luck, everybody.